So this video takes a look at our first impressions and drive of the Polestar 2. Fortunate enough to get some time down in New York City to enjoy the city, but also check out the Polestar pop-up space, which has been put in at the corner of Central Park and 5th Avenue up on 59th Street. So we know the city fairly well from having lived in Brooklyn for a bunch of years. They have pop-ups over in San Francisco, Los Angeles, here in the East Coast and New York. There are plans, I'm told, to come up to Boston and a handful of other market cities as well. But predominantly at the moment, just the 3 locations. It's definitely a premium, almost luxury vehicle, but it's on a Volvo base, very solidly built, and really nice looking car as well. So the Polestar arm of Volvo is also Geely underneath that, the Chinese manufacturer. And it's more a performance electric vehicle. The Polestar 1 is a kind of hybrid supercar, if you like, way into the 6 figures, so interesting and certainly attractive, but not something that a lot of people are going to have in their driveways. Polestar 2, much more affordable, down in that kind of $60,000 bracket, depending on what you choose. There's a performance option. There are various, nice trim additions you can add on. But I thought this video would give you a my take as a, humble Bolt EV driver. How does it feel in comparison? What kind of specs are we looking at? One pedal driving, interior of the cabin, infotainment, range, battery size, all the things that are important to electric vehicle owners. We're going to try and dive into those today. New York has some pretty bumpy roads, lots of distracting noises, so it wasn't the best audio, but we'll do what we can and explain most of it away in this description here. So let's dive in. Okay, solo Polestar 2 test drive. So hopefully the angle is good here. We are in New York City, driving a Polestar 2. I am rather happy. So initially, what are we gonna say? Obviously premium. We've got some really nice materials here. Visibility out the rear, not great, I've got to say. It's a very letterbox size opening. Nice big mirror here, but then you're kind of restricted to the space you can see out the back. Big frameless mirrors, wing mirrors, very good. That's going to help a little bit with that visibility all around. Definitely got some grunt, albeit the slow streets of Manhattan, you don't want to floor it too hard, but I'm reliably informed we can get over to the West Side Highway and give it some beans over that side. So initial feelings, we walked around the vehicle in the same color. It was a base model, midnight blue, not performance package or anything like that, just the regular car that you would start off with if you were on the lower end of the pricing spectrum. And still impressed. The regular driver, I think it's going to be more than enough power, more than enough handling and options in the regular version that we took on to satisfy. If you're coming from anything other than a Tesla or something that is even quicker and has perhaps more options to change the dynamics of the car, then I think you're going to be happy. Certainly coming from a Bolt EV, as nippy and as capable as this car is, it was a clear step up. Let's see if I can navigate through New York City. So if it can handle driving here, it can handle anything, I would guess. I mean, you can see pretty tight spaces here. Clearly feel like this is a car that has been designed by a manufacturer with decades of experience refining the cabin. So that's a plus in a lot of ways for things like the driver's information cluster, for the central navigation, and having buttons for certain things that you do want, having the wipers on stalks on the stalk. And that brings us on to technology, which is definitely one of this car's fortes. It's the first automobile with Google's Automotive system built in. So With that, it's baked. Android Auto is baked into the center tablet, so that everything is there. It's not trying to go through your phone and deal with a laggy connection, which can certainly be the case in this car, but also anything that is relying on communicating from your phone to the vehicle via a USB cable, not ideal. And certainly now that GM is getting into, you know, Google baking those things into some of their future vehicles, and Polestar has shown what it can do with it. Very, very nice interface, you know, as snappy as a Tesla, but with the bonus of being baked into your you know, Google experience. So if you are an Android user, if this is something where the Google ecosystem is something you're familiar with, a lot of that's going to happen through the center console now in a Polestar 2. You've got your 4 favorite sections here, so you can put different media. It's a very responsive drag and drop system. Let's have it head us back now. You can see, very snappy Google Maps. There's the whole island. Do your usual recenter. So it's not going to be a learning curve, you know, you're going to know this if you use an Android device or even any kind of device with Google Maps. This is going to be very intuitive. You'll have your Spotify, which I should not neglect to play. Play Idols, Danny Nedelko.
Sure, asking Spotify to play Danny Nedelko by Idols.
Very responsive, punchy. In terms of performance, straight off the line speed, my goodness does this thing shift. I didn't necessarily expect it to be quite so, you know, slam you back in your seat. Maybe because, you know, the general specs are a little behind the Model 3, and we've been in one of those, and it obviously has that wow factor of acceleration at least. I really think the Polestar 2 has more than enough. You know, it may just be coming from a regular Bolt EV driver, but I don't know how much more you could really need. You know, getting onto the West Side Highway, you know, let's give it some. Wow, that's good. Nice. It goes like stink. That is going to be plenty. Absolutely plenty. Really good. There wasn't much space there. We were absolutely fine, and oh my goodness, this is a nice tight ride. Okay, we got let's give the Porsche run for his money. Oh wow, that's definitely got some stink. You're really potential to give you some fun. It's an opportunity to get into the outside lane and really give it some beans, and that just, you know, took off. I don't think the footage that I'll put up here does it justice, but it was, you know, my heart was racing at that point just from how much it took off, and then we had to get off the West Side Highway right away. So it wasn't much of an opportunity to really hammer it, but you feel it, you know, it's definitely right there. It was really tight, felt responsive, quick off the line, and then, you know, moving into something that's really important for me, and I do think a lot of other people, if you're considering, you know, upgrading to a next EV, or, you know, just want to think about another electric vehicle in general, the one pedal driving really comes into play, because I don't know many Bolt EV drivers that spend a lot of time in D. So that's where it's in the mode that is more freewheeling, you know, still has some regen and deceleration, but not nearly as much as in L mode, where you have heavy deceleration and regenerative braking, and it will come to a complete stop. The Polestar 2 felt very similar to L drive in the Bolt. Really nice regen. Comes to a stop, feels very much like the Bolt. Really like that. I've always felt in the Model 3 that the regen just wasn't quite as natural and one pedal as the Bolt EV, and this feels much closer to the Bolt in terms of that driving dynamic, one pedal driving, than the Model 3. That's a good sign because it's something that I'd really hate to lose. There are different drives here, so one pedal drive, let's try it in low, see how that feels. You can have creep on and off as you can in a Tesla. In the Bolt EV, the creep is essentially just putting it back into drive mode D, and that makes it much more like a traditional car feel. And then down in L, you're talking about full regen, much more like this is in standard. So it's interesting that that's how they term it. Standard is a nice term to use for one pedal driving, because I think that should be standard. Such lift right away. It feels good as well compared to something like an e-tron. I think once you get into an EV and you're used to the regenerative braking, it's something that is a big selling point of the car. Feels much more natural and a symbiotic drive at that point. So that was why I was so happy to have it feel very similar in the Polestar. It was not jarring at all. Very, very natural experience to go from driving in this with L mode to driving in the Polestar 2. So the pros, a lot of them we've touched on. Outstanding integration of technology and the Android ecosystem. Everything's responsive, everything is where you would want it to be, and it felt good. You know, I was in there for, you know, a very short amount of time before I felt like I knew the car, and it was you know, easy to become the driver of that car. It felt like it was gonna be something fun to drive on windy, you know, roads up into the hills around here. The ride was still comfortable. It was a nice quiet cabin, so it's somewhere between a, you know, Tesla pure adrenaline performance and a more refined characteristics of something like the Audi e-tron. Again, one pedal driving, standard setting, absolutely spot on. Couldn't fault it at all, just the right amount. And you know, you'd have to do some testing to see how much it's putting back into the battery, but in terms of what you can use it to do to decelerate and have more of a one pedal driving experience, absolutely, you know, nothing bad to say about it. Felt really good. The cabin, very pleasant place to be. You know, aside from the kind of feeling a little restricted because of the tunnel, which is more in the cons section, everything is where you would want it. I love the integration, as I say, with Android. The information clusters are great. The steering wheel felt very solid. Materials, you know, really nice. Honestly, as I kind of come from this car, people moan about the Bolt EV and its you know, cheap interior. It really doesn't bother me. I think in general I'm not as wowed, or that it doesn't make such a big distinguishing factor for me in a car to have slightly different materials. You know, this is hard plastic. It's obviously nicer to the touch in the kind of car that the Polestar 2 is. But again, I was in the e-tron, and nice place to be. I'm sure it's a lot quieter on the highway, but it doesn't make such a difference to me that I would suddenly jump up 30 or 40 grand more. But you know, the mixture of driving characteristics, technology, and everything it brings alongside that kind of quality Volvo engineering and build, I think is a winning package. I really struggle to find any complaints. Has the frunk, has the hatch in the trunk, and lots and lots of space back there. So lots of plus points on all of those categories, but let's move on to some of the cons. So in terms of cons, most of it comes down to the driver's perspective, you know, the type of things that you're going to experience as you drive the car. The cockpit feel of it, having a large central tunnel, it feel more encased, if you like. So, you know, that's something that's common with a lot of vehicles. It's not specific to the Polestar 2, but I think EVs have an opportunity when these manufacturers are designing the car to get away from those restrictive things that you know, gasoline cars bring them. So you can get rid of the transmission tunnel. There may be certain design elements that make it necessary to have components down there, but you know, you can do much more of a flat four in the rear. You can do what Nissan is doing with the Ariya and follow the kind of less is more down here, you know, have a large open space where things can be stored, carried, or just enjoyed, you know, spreading out a little bit more. If you can give a flat four in the rear so that loading is a bit better, so that people can cross over, it just is a bit more utilitarian at that point. One thing I would kind of question is range. You could have a whole section on this really. Again, a lot of the newer cars that are coming out have somewhere in the region of 300 miles. The EPA range is going to be 275 miles, and I don't know what the car's been doing before my test drive, but it read 160 miles on the driver's information cluster, and it was at 81%. So you extrapolate that out and bring it up to 100%, you're still only at 190 miles. Now, the question mark there is, was it based on going around Manhattan, which is very slow for the most part, as we covered, you know, crawling with other traffic, you know, well below 30 miles an hour? Or had it been driven somewhere on another test drive or a media drive or something that was a bit more expansive, where it was tearing around hills, you know, going into elevation? It's certainly a car that could be capable of being thirsty. So, you know, I guess we have to look more at the kind of things that are being done in Europe and the range tests that are happening over there. Could still be fine, you know, if that charging curve looks right, if the speed is right and it doesn't taper off too aggressively, then you're in good shape. You'd want it to be much closer to 300 than to the 200 in most circumstances. My test drive was on a pretty warm day, 70 degrees. All the test drives prior would have been in very similar territory, so all you can really say is maybe they were, you know, hooning it on the highway and taking it up to the hills, but we'd have to give it the benefit of the doubt on that. But certainly something to watch as more and more, you know, real world tests come in. So beyond range, again, not really something to do with the car itself, more to do with the situation around how it's sold. So it's part of the, you know, Volvo arm. Obviously Polestar is, you know, engineered by a lot of Volvo technology, but the service situation still seems very vague. It's quite hard to get. I don't think they know, honestly, at the showrooms or the, you know, Polestar Space, exactly what the deal will be. I think Volvo dealerships, from the sound of it, can sign up to be Polestar certified, but if you're not, you know, certain going in how this $60,000 car will be serviced, that could be a worry. If you're near New York or Boston, San Francisco, Los Angeles, you know, probably Chicago and a bunch of other big cities, it's probably going to be fine. But further out, it may not be the car for you. You know, they talk about 150-mile radius in which they'll deliver the car, you know, and pick it up and service it for you. I don't know if that's going to work much beyond that. You know, it could be for the same reason that people who aren't near Tesla service centers have question marks over how the car will be looked after. I think Polestar will run into very similar things. To me, it just seems to be the perfect blend of, you know, Volvo's solid build quality, robust materials and style, safety, you know, that people like for family cars and have done for decades, but also just with that bit of swagger, you know, a quiet kind of confidence to it. The whole experience of being into a space rather than a showroom or a dealership was very nice. Early days, so you can't really tell how that will evolve. They may be keeping some of these spaces, but they're pop-ups at the moment, and very much, you know, the first kind of iteration of getting people in the car and test driving. So we'll see how that changes, but it looks positive from the beginning. You know, low pressure, very, you know, calm. Take a look at the vehicle, walk around, see what you think of it, and then get in and have a very leisurely test drive with no pressure. It's a kind of 50,000 point and get something which is, you know, really, really nice ride and checks a lot of boxes for people. And again, looking at it from a family man's point of view, you know, the hatch is practical. There's a lot of space back there. It doesn't quite perform all of the you know, duties that a more, you know, large, tall CUV or SUV would, but, you know, it might be something that you can make work, whereas something like a Model 3 for us just wouldn't. Performance, just enough. You don't necessarily need that much more unless you really are a you know, speed freak, or you need to have the latest, greatest technology that a Tesla can offer you. with everything you know, over the air, but it does do a lot with Android. That's going to be, you know, a big selling point. I think it's a really nice application, having the driver's information cluster up there with all of the maps and the information you want. Really nice. So I really only have 2 thumbs up. You know, the things that I tried to pick out of it, some very niggling points. You know, visibility isn't great from the driver's point of view. There are some, you know, blind spots. So overall, very exciting addition to the electric vehicle lineup. There's more and more options coming on the market, and this is, you know, one that really goes a step further in a lot of ways. May not, you know, beat out Tesla on a bunch of specs, but it doesn't have to. As a package, it's really compelling and something that I think a lot of people will want to get into once they have a test drive. So when you see these things out on the street, it's going to be a head turner. It's a unique vehicle, has its own little place in the EV universe, I think, and I'm excited, privileged to have driven it. So thank you to everyone who watched this video. I hope you enjoyed coming from a slightly different car's perspective. We'll try and get into some others as the weeks and months go by. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.